Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wisdom and Wonder. I'm your host, Ann Jan, and this is where we explore ideas with curiosity and an open mind. Today on the show, we're so excited to have Melinda Estabrooks with us. Melinda is the host, executive producer, showrunner of the talk show See, Hear, Love. She has worked in media and journalism for 15 years. She's a passion for connecting with women and hearing their stories and empowering them. So, welcome, Melinda. Thank you so much for being here.
And thank you so much for having me. I love these kinds of conversations and meeting new people. So, this is just a great opportunity and a way of connection for the two of us,
Yeah.
getting to know one another as well. So, thank you so much.
I'm just gonna jump into the first question here,
Sure.
which is I've always admired. Actually, I saw you years ago. You did, I think it was a show with oh, what is her name? She wrote a book about gratitude. I believe it was. She's really well
Oh, my
known.
goodness.
It was Anne. I want to say Anne Voskamp.
Ann
You did,
Voskamp.
yes.
Yes, Ann
So
Voskamp.
I
Yes.
was there. I actually was in the audience for that. I think for that show, and so, but I mean, I've, I've watched different things of you through the years because I feel like
Mhm.
it's the Christian community, it's a small world, and so yeah, I'm grateful for what you've been working on,
Thank you.
and I've admired the way that you have overcome life challenges. I think you had a divorce happen while in the spotlight. That cannot
Mhm.
be easy. I cannot even, yeah, I can imagine how difficult that was. So I just kind of wanted to like maybe go through some of the ways that you've overcome challenges, as like the theme for us today is trying to talk about like hope. How do we have hope in these challenging times,
Mhm.
like in our
Mhm.
life, because life is really hard. So
Mhm.
the older you get, almost like the more that is affirmed.
Absolutely.
So
So, what would you like? There, I mean, there's many challenges. So,
yeah.
and where would you like to start with that?
Yeah, so maybe just like tell us about how you had the courage to sort of like tell people that story so
Okay. Yeah.
vulnerably to like your audience. Like that is so personal, and
Mhm.
navigating that. Like just tell us about how that process went
Sure.
for you. How did you do that?
Mhm. So I'll start with the lead up. So, I think in all honesty and vulnerability, our marriage was hard. I think when I talk to people about getting married, uh, there is a necessary conversation about values and alignment, expectations, family of origin, how you deal with conflict, how you deal with finances, how and rejection and shame and embarrassment come flooding in. And yes, I was a co host of a women's talk show then, not See Her Love, it was called Full Circle, on one of Canada's premier daily Christian shows called 100 Huntley Street. And we were the Friday edition of this, and we were on global television. We were on Yes TV. It was public. And my ex husband at the time had been on the show. People knew my husband and I because we were part of the church community. We were leading a small group. We were known in our community. And then this happens. And to be honest, I hid away. It was very difficult for me because I think I was shouldering and feeling all the weight of the shame of how can I, as a Christian women in ministry, speaking across Canada, sharing about life with Jesus and it's good and it's whole and it's healthy, be going through a separation and divorce. So imagine all the feelings I had that I was carrying within me, feeling all these things. And so, you've asked when I had to tell the audience about my marriage, when I had to kind of reveal it. It was awful.
Hmm.
It was awful. You know, at the time, the producers and leadership of the show felt that it was important that I share it publicly that I was going through a divorce. And that was a moment I'll never forget. I sat on the sofa. I had many people praying for me, and I told basically the world that my husband had left. And I was feeling all of the, what are people going to think of me? People are going to think that I'm not worthy to sit on a Christian show. They're going to assume things about me. And yet, I was really well supported. I had co hosts, I had people praying for me. I had a great Christian therapist, a great church community, a great community of girlfriends and small group that were rooting for me and had my back. So even if I was decimated and I was going to be kicked off the show and people would, you know, give me a big scarlet letter on me, I knew that I would be okay. But I still was scared. I still was really nervous about what people would think of me.
Mm,
Uh, and yet it was sort of this strange, like, and but, or like the tension of sort of this duality of the feelings. Like I was feeling all of this, and yet I was still feeling hopeful and courageous and well loved, and yet full of shame, embarrassment, and all of that. So that's essentially, how I felt. And then I shared it. And here's what's interesting, Anne. I shared it, you know, out to Canada, out on television, and the clip went viral on YouTube of me announcing my separation and divorce. And I thought I was going to get letters and phone calls of people like kicking me off the show and shaming me. But instead, hundreds of letters, emails, and Facebook messages came to me of people in ministry, leaders, everyday people saying, "Thank you for sharing that because here is my story." And
mm,
Anne, I held these stories that were devastating, of women and men being left, churches kicking them out, families even kicking them out, and not able to get jobs, people gossiping about them and saying to me, "Thank you for being brave and courageous because I thought I was the only one in this kind of story. And you kind of blew open the doors and opened it up that I'm not alone,
mm,
that I will be able to get through this." And even speaking it out, naming it in the sense of I'm naming out being abandoned and left, and yet I still feel hopeful for my future. Thank you. And I had hundreds of letters and in bags dumped on my desk. I was reading them letter after letter of people saying thank you for sharing. So it was a time. It was
yes.
definitely a moment in my life of overcoming hardship and very publicly too.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful in the sense, like, obviously, such a hard thing to do, but then the response, I think sometimes we're our own, worst critic.
Yes. Yes.
We think, yeah, we totally can be that way too, of just being like, we have this shame and we're carrying shame that, and God doesn't want that for us too, because you think about
Yeah.
like God isn't shaming us, and so much of, and so I think sometimes we are like self-flagellating ourselves, and then when it even sometimes, I mean, there are options. Sometimes it happens where people are horrible on the internet. That's also
Mhm.
a reality, but I think sometimes we're our own like, yeah, like no one will get this. And then it's like, you know what? Lots of people have gone through this process, and that in
Mhm.
some way helps you. So I'm just like that. I'm just I'm proud of you in a way. I don't really know
Thank
you, but I'm
you.
proud
I
of you
know. I
that for
appreciate that.
yeah.
Here's the thing, what I've realized and in my life as I've gotten older and in the work I do, vulnerability is part of us becoming fully who shared the hard things, hard stories. It's actually opened me up to new friendships and community and life as it's meant to be, and that people then connect with you and you connect with other people and you help people and they help you and you learn together and you start seeing a life of flourishing and thriving because of vulnerability and openness, which is so funny because culture's always like, keep it away and look like you have it all together. And so then people will respect you, people will come to you, people will honor you. But it was really more of a sense of I opened myself up and the opposite happened. And I saw myself be healed. And I saw so many other women and men be healed and start a journey of restoration, reconciliation, acceptance, um, and even a closer relationship with Jesus because they knew that they needed to lean into him more through the crisis, through the challenge. And I've seen that in my life. For the past 50 years, I have seen, God and community show up when I was the most vulnerable and open and at my lowest, show up for me. And it's a beautiful thing. I hope the people listening will have that opportunity to see uh, God work through people and God work through our brokenness and challenge for an even more wow life that is something that you could never dream or imagine.
Oh, that's like so inspiring. And I think that is something like when I was thinking about what I was going to ask you about and talk to you
Mm,
about, there's so many things we could have talked about, but I think, people often think like, oh, students, they're in this like really idealistic and like exciting part of life, but there's also so many like you're still
mhm.
experiencing the hardships of, whether it be a breakup, if that's your marriage, that's huge. But even if it's like a breakup for the first time, the person you really thought you were gonna be with, or, you're applying for all these jobs and you keep getting rejected and you're like, oh my goodness, like I'm just straight out of school, or I'm like even a summer job, or like, lots of people have experienced loved ones like passing away, and like all of these really crazy things that have happened to people even though they're still in their early 20s. Like, I mean, I'm not. I'm a mature student,
Mhm.
so I've seen more of, like, I would say probably than some people in terms of hardship. But who knows, right? Like, you don't know people's story, and we're all experiencing hardship even if we're young. And I think
Yeah,
it's people kind of like, oh, young people, they're just so full of hope. I'm like, yeah, but they also are really struggling sometimes too. And I want
yeah,
to speak to that.
yeah.
So, yeah, the next
Oh,
question, yeah, is kind of
okay,
about
well,
that. Like, sort of like, how do you, like, in your life, you've had a lot of setbacks, because there's not like
mhm.
no one has not a lot of setbacks in life. So how do you like hold on to hope? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. When I look back at my life, Anne, I know this sounds so simple, but I every day go look in the mirror and I say to myself, I am here. I have made it. Like being, when I celebrated my 50th birthday last year with my 50th closest girlfriends, I stood in front of them and I said, I am here. And it actually makes me emotional because for all the things that I have gone through, to be standing here was huge. It was like a miracle. It was because I failed and I got up. It was because of challenges. It was because of resilience. It was because of choosing. It was because of girlfriends picking me up and throwing me in the shower when I was depressed. But I celebrated with my friends that I was here. And I remember thinking back when I'm thinking about my divorce and I was packing up my house and I was in a fetal position on the floor and I could not believe the devastation of being literally left and abandoned and my heart broken in so many ways. And my best friend Marcia was folding my clothes and helping me pack up the house. And I'm sobbing and I'm just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And she looked at me and she goes, yes, you can. And here's the truth. Today is not your forever. Hard stop. And I look at her. She goes, today is not your forever. This is not your forever, Melinda. You're going to get through this. We're going to be here for you. God has always been with you. And and it reminded me of my favorite life verse that, my little friend Carrie shared with me when we were in the Philippines because my parents were missionaries. I was adopted in the Philippines, and so I grew up in the Philippines and Singapore, and my parents were missionaries. And my little friend Carrie said to me, "I think this would be a good life verse for you." And I think we were like in kindergarten or grade 1. And it was this verse. It was Isaiah 41:10. And it was, "Do not fear, for I, God, am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I'm your God, and I will strengthen you and help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." And I have lived in that verse. within it, around it, through it, when I'm afraid, when everything, doors have been like shut, when I've gone through my like 8 months of dark night of soul depression, when I was a prodigal daughter and running far away and trying to escape all of my pain through clubs and drinking and getting drunk and men, I always knew that God was with me and I wasn't to fear. And so I always feel that, you know, how I hold on to hope. I think, I know this sounds cliche and very Sunday school, but memorizing verses or singing songs that have verses have really helped me
Mm.
to get through. I think there's a couple things about holding on to hope is that I have, again, a community that speaks hope for me when I can't. And I've really had to and cultivate that. Like, I really struggled with having girlfriends when I was younger. I always felt that they were threatened or jealous or mean, and they were mean girls to me. And so I never wanted to have girlfriends. But I've realized as I've gotten older that girlfriends are the ones who've really been with me. When I've really prayed, God, help me get a tribe, women who've got my back. They're the ones who've prayed for me, helped me in any time I was down or I failed. They were the ones who held on to hope when I couldn't and spoke hope for me. Like I said, the scriptures have helped me. And I think that for me, there's just been an acknowledgement of like, I am here and I've made it. Now that I'm on the other side of things, I'm like looking back and going, wow, like I actually have made it and I'm stronger. And I think that's part of it too. I know students are younger and I'm kind of on the other side where I'm at an older age. And when I look back at my life, I'm like, wow, I've seen the answer to prayer so many times in my life. But I think holding on to hope is looking at yourself and going, I'm here today. What am I going to do today that, is going to be kind and loving to the person I meet today? How am I going to be kind and loving to myself? And then knowing that God's spirit is in us and working in us and giving us all that we need. Like I think about 2 Timothy 1:7. That's I know we all say, but God didn't give us a spirit of, fear or timidity, but a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. And when I think of power, I'm like, wow, power to like push through hard things, power to speak truth over things, over my own life, and to not give into the lies or fears. A spirit of love for myself and others, and then a spirit of a sound mind, wisdom, and guidance in your life. So I know I've run on and said that, but
Mm.
those are the things that I've really done to hold on to hope, or those different things in my life, where I am now here and I'm like, wow, like I've made it and I have scars and I have regrets and I have things, but God has just been a God who's like, I'm with you. It's our story, Melinda, not just your story, but it's our story together. And I celebrate being here today. So,
Oh, that's so wonderful. It's funny because the verse that like I sort of live into, because it's very is, and it's actually the story. It's the story of Hagar. That is like
yeah,
that is the story for me in those moments where it's like the God who sees. You know what I mean? Because like
God
life is
is.
so
Mhm.
tough sometimes, and you're like, oh, it's just you're hit with situations you just cannot even. You would never have dreamed that and the hardships. You're just, whew,
Yeah.
yeah, you're just it.
And I think too, like I say this to parents or
Mm,
anybody that's like older, but the other also part of why I'm where I am is just the prayers of my parents and the prayers
mm.
of the community. Like they didn't stop praying for me. They didn't stop hoping that I would come home. They didn't stop hoping that I would get through this depression. They didn't stop hoping that, the dreams that I had that failed or ended my passions and giftings wouldn't come alive sometime. And so that's why, I'm always really big on, you're not to do life alone. You can't do life alone. You can't isolate yourself and just be like, I'm introverted. I don't like people. I'm just going to be by myself. It's not going to work for you. I don't even care if you're introverted or, and I have an introverted husband and kids and I'm just like, no, you have to have people. Like even if I'm not talking like 100. I'm talking one, two, three even that know you, that you'll be open to, that you can call, that they can, you can be with, that are going to really support you. And I've really cultivated over my life like really good friendships. I have a lot of girlfriends in different parts of my life and the work that I do in very like sacred spaces where I trust, for fun, for adventure, for not for profit world, for media world, for leadership world. Like I'm very intentional, Anne, about groups of women that I connect with that really give into my life. I learn from, and when I'm like desperate, I'm like, prayer text, here's my 10, here's the prayers. And they just start like, I'm praying, pray. We got you. You're covered. We got you. We got your back. Like I can't imagine life without that. And so that's a huge thing that I say to encourage people, like get your people and pray, go to a church, be really intentional. I went after my mentor. I went after certain women too in my life to say, I'm looking at them as older women I could learn from, and I went after them. I phoned them up. I went to their talks and talked to them. And one of the mentors that I connected with in my early 20s is still my mentor today.
Wow.
Is still my mentor today. And that was my early 20s. I went after her. She was speaking at a church, and I'm like, I want her to be my friend and mentor. And I went by myself. I drove over to the church and I waited in line and I waited to talk to her. And I said, would there ever be a time I could take you out for lunch and just talk to you? And after that lunch, she looked at me. She said, I think God's connected us. Let's do a prayer walk around this city, which was hilarious. I loved it. And then she's like, I think I want to be your mentor. And that
Wow.
was it. 30 years later, she still is. And she's been a lifeline in my ministry, in my vocation, in my work, in my life. And so I would just encourage, that that's really important for you to be very intentional about finding those people for your life.
Yeah, that's good. I'm like,
Mhm.
I want to go find mentors now.
Mhm.
Because
And
I
they're
think,
amazing. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I think that's something that I actually have been like, I mean, I have a really good friend group. I have a good church. I have a lot of people that love me, and I feel like I'm connected to community. Um, but I think that's something that I have been like, even as I think about myself and where I am in my career, like I'm restarting. There's a level of like all of that of like, how do I want someone who's also like has the same values that I do and
Mhm.
wants to be led by the spirit and where it's like,
Mhm.
and so I think there's pieces where that like I also have that too of like I need to find someone that's kind of gets it because it's yeah, I think there's that of and really vibes with you too because I think sometimes with mentors it's like it's a connection that's like on many levels and you just get each other. I think like it's
Yeah.
like friendship. You just kind of know this
Yeah.
is going to be my person and you just and then it is like often.
Yeah. And the other part too is I'm encouraging women that are older to open themselves up to be mentors to younger women. Like there's sort of a relationship there. It's like there are people who need mentors, and we need as older women, mature women, fun women, I call us, to also give in to you know uh, our time and our energies and relationship to younger women as well. Because honestly, I've had so many great mentors in my life, and I really believe that's a big part of why I'm where I am today. In all areas. And so I think I'm glad, Anne, that you say that because I think it's really important that we all have that person. And sometimes it takes a while, and other times it's an immediate connection. So I really prayed about it, and then I was just courageous and went for it. Like I just
Mm,
literally got in the car and went for it. So however
yeah.
you want to do it, I would say go for it. Find a mentor, find somebody that you can
Hmm.
connect with and learn from and do life with.
And I think that's the point that you made about courage is really interesting because I think that is something that I have had to lean into as I've gotten older, more and more. And so, like, even like, so I started this podcast, and it's I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no idea where 100. I don't really know where it's going to go either. There's a part of me that's like I don't know. I just was like I really want to do this. Um, I'm interested in doing it. And so I actually had someone from another university actually reached out to me and was like, I want to interview you. And she was like, I'm interested in starting a podcast. And I was like, just do it. Like, you
Mhm.
can find the resources, maybe it's not going to grow to this giant thing, but like you will still learn. It's not
Yeah,
wasted time. It's kind of just like taking a shot. And maybe some of those shots that you take in life, you won't make it, and that won't be your shot. But you still are gonna it's gonna help you. Then you can like it's almost like a muscle. Like every time that I take a giant, like I'm like a
that's
leap,
right.
I'm like I don't know what's gonna happen. This could just fall on its face. But then when you do, and every time I just feel like it still has like taught me. Even the times where things didn't work out, I'm like actually this isn't gonna work, and this, that, and the other. Like I still feel like you can be proud of yourself for like taking the step, because that's honestly like almost the hardest part, because you can talk yourself out of anything. That's how I see it too, right? You're like, oh,
Totally.
well.
Yeah.
So
No,
you've
that's
had that
good.
too, right? Like you've had to take a lot of big steps, like in your life
Mhm.
of being courageous. So like, could you maybe like, I'm sorry, I'm going off script, but
No, it's okay.
yeah, if there's a few that you were like, this was like, I felt this is a, like, how did you discern that this was a step you needed to take? Or yeah, like, could you maybe
Mm.
speak into that a little bit?
So, you mean taking courageous steps
Yeah,
towards something?
yeah.
Okay. So, one, obvious one, I'll do two. One was the launch of my show, See Her Love. So, I was on, earlier I talked about the women's show that I was on that ended. And it was heartbreaking because it was like 7 years of women talking around a couch. And as soon as it ended, it was like God said, Melinda, you need to continue this on. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I'm just like a co host. I don't know how to produce something. And there was a real sense of starting it as a web show to reach the next generation, because I'm a Gen Xer, to reach the next generation called the millennials. And I'm like, I don't know how to do a web show. Like, what do I do? And I honestly felt God say, I'll be with you. Just start. So I started like a website, and I asked a girlfriend to help me, and she did. And I didn't know how to do this, and I was just like, what do I do? And it was really interesting because as soon as I said, what do I do? But I really sensed that God was doing this. People started coming to me to help me, like pro bono. I'll help you, Melinda. I believe in the vision. I believe what you're doing. I'll just help you for free. And I was like, what? Because I had no money. And I had this great idea, and I wrote a 16-page paper, and I pitched it to, um, you know, a organization that at that time it was different leadership. I actually pitched it to Crossroads, which is where I am at now, but it was different leadership. And I worked really hard. I got a website going. I had the plan, and like I said, 16-page paper, and I gave it to the leadership. And I was just by myself. I'd never pitched anything before, and the leadership said, "No, we don't think this is a good idea. We're going to do something different. It's a hard no." And I was like, and I was devastated because I really felt I heard God's voice. I worked like a year on my own time, working at it, writing it, paying for the website, figuring out the domain, everything. And it was a no. And I left the boardroom, and I was trying not to cry, and I got out of the building, and I was calling my girlfriend, and she's like, meet me. I said, meet me because it's not good news. And so she met me on the beach near my house, and she had a blanket, and I got on the blanket, and I burst into tears because there was a couple things. I thought that I hadn't heard from God. I thought that my pitch wasn't good. I thought maybe it's a really bad idea to launch a women's web show. Who am I to do this when I don't know how to do it? And I'm like, I honestly, for the first time, I was like, I might have missed it. I might have missed the entire like listening to God for this idea. And as I was sitting on the blanket on the beach, my girlfriend's just like, Melinda, man's no can be no, but that could mean a not yet from God. the adventures and where I am and where I've come has been like, whoa, I could never have planned this better because I've
Hmm.
just allowed God to be like, okay, are you ready for me and you to do this relationship in a very, like open and trusting way? And I'm like, okay, sure. And then here I am. So
Yeah.
I think, the door closes, it's a no. Okay. And I'm disappointed. Yes. All right, God, where do you have me go now?
Yeah.
Wherever you take me, I'm ready. I'm available and I'm open. So that's
Yeah.
sort of a bit of advice of how I've been really living. And because what happens is that when we're so tied to that thing, we get disappointed over and over and over again. And then I find that the people I've met blame God, and then they're angry at God because that didn't happen. And then they're angry at the church, and then they're angry like, and I'm like, stop being angry. You don't have time to be angry all the time. Blaming it on God or other people. It's like live your life faithfully with hope, following Jesus, and then get ready for a life that, you know, is is a life of love and service and community. So I think that's some of the best advice I can give from where I'm sitting
Hmm.
now. I didn't know that when I was younger, but now I'm just like, because life is full of unexpected things happening all the time. Your heart will break. You won't get the job. There will be death and loss and grief. And there's a lot of sadness and pain and anxiety. And yet there's also beauty and love and joy and dancing and singing and bonfires and canoeing and all the beauty of the world uh, that there is to offer. And I think in my relationship with God, that's the fullness of life. We experience all of it and remain faithful and close to Him, leaning in and just being led to be like, wherever you lead me, I'll go and I'll love.
Hmm.
That's sort of like how my life is going right now.
So, like, I feel like that was the question I was kind of going to ask you, but you kind of said it already. Of like, what would you advice would you give to your younger self? But I think that's really, I
Oh,
think that
I still have some points, Anne. I still have
okay.
some points. I've written
Let's
them all
get
down. Okay.
okay, because I feel like that's the question
Okay.
that I'm.
First one, yeah. So, advice I would give to my younger self. What I mentioned before, you need community. You need to find a life giving community, a community that supports you, where you have fun, where you cry and share, where you can be your authentic self. It may take time, but that should be the top of your prayer list, like a community that is life giving, that is for you, that loves Jesus. You need that community. Second, I know I say this, but women are not your enemy. Stop feeling threatened or jealous of them. And women, we need to stop being threatened and jealous of others. Like, that was really hard. Like, all throughout my younger formative years, I had this issue with girlfriends. Like, I didn't trust them because I thought they were jealous or they were threatened, and I just have felt now that I can't do my life without good women. So if you have issues with women and you don't trust, then that's something that I would just really encourage to work through and find those women that can be your friends. Same as for guys, it's another podcast conversation, but I just, as a woman, saying that. The third, and I would say this, and this is just a reality for my own life, you can't escape yourself. And even when you try to fill your life with things, drugs, drinking, shopping, sex, or pleasures, you can't escape yourself. So you need to ask the question, how are you cultivating a life that you love or that's about becoming a person that you enjoy being with? I say this because when I went through my prodigal years, I didn't like myself, so I tried to escape myself. And I did all the things to try to escape, and they were destructive. But I didn't like who I was. I wanted to numb how I was feeling rather than face up to the feelings. And so I know as a young person, there's many ways that we escape. Sometimes it's extreme video gaming and it's extreme this, and this, and this. But you need to come to a place where, do I like myself? And why can't I just be with myself without trying to fill it with other things to distract from what God is saying to me, from being with God? So I would say that's a big one advice. Like, you can't escape yourself. So you need to go on the journey of understanding what don't you like about yourself and how to kind of get back to, oh, I love being with me. Fourth, I would figure out a way to get along with your parents. And I regret that I lost a lot of years with my relationship with my parents. I regret the pain I put them through. And I regret not hanging out with them more. Now that they're older, they're in their 80s. I love hanging out with them. It's so funny. I'm like, wanting to, hang out with them on the weekends and do things. But when I was younger, I always felt like, my parents, and I'll have my parents forever. And I just feel, for a young person, like if I was somebody had said, Mel, really figure out a better relationship with your parents. I wish I had done that. Fifth, don't blame God for everything because many things happen because of bad decisions people made. So, excuse me, I'm one where when people are like blaming God for things, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Somebody did that. Somebody made a poor decision. Don't blame God. And just don't, like, stop going to church or stop connecting with God because somebody made a bad decision. I would say number six, go after your dreams. Fail and then get back up and try again. Go for it. If you're like, I want to write a book, I want to have a podcast, I want to try it, I would say try it. And if you fail or it doesn't work out, then at least you tried it. But the worst I think is to be on your deathbed and be like, oh, I didn't do that. Oh, I wish I had done that. Or I wish I'd had better relationships. Like, do it. Do it now. Don't wait. Don't put it off. And then finally, I know this is funny, make your bed in the morning. There is something about waking up and you make your bed. There's something physical and psychological. When you make your bed, it feels like you're ready for the day. You're not racing, you're not feeling rushed. You're making your bed so that you're preparing it for yourself for the night so you can have a good sleep. But I have found when you make your bed, it just does something in your mind space to clear yourself to say, yep, now I'm ready. And I'm readying myself for tonight. It's nice and clean. My mind, because a messy room, a messy house connects for me a messy mind and chaos. That just represents make your bed. And then the rest is like that. And then, I mean, obviously, you need Jesus. I mean, that's the final thing. I couldn't have done life without Jesus. My relationship with Jesus has been very close sometimes and then very far away. I talk to him a lot, God, how are you doing? What's happening? I have a very, very close relationship with God in the way that I'm just talk with him and share my thoughts. And and so I would say really pursue and spend the needed time with God in any way you can. I go on a silent retreat. I do retreats. I take off some days just to take a walk, to listen, to pray, to sing, do the work and build into that relationship with Jesus. So those are what I would say is my advice for my younger self. I wish I'd heard that when I was younger, but I hope those help your listeners. But those are some of the things that I, have lived with. And then again, like I mentioned, find a mentor. Find a mentor that can help give you perspective, can help lead you in areas, can be a good sounding board, can support you and pray for you. But find a mentor. And I think that's it. I
Okay.
think that's it, Anne. I hope that's enough. I hope those were enough
No, that's like
answers.
wonderful.
Okay,
So,
okay, good.
well, thank you so much, Melinda, for
Of
coming on the
course.
show and being a part of just like I just feel very inspired myself. I feel like a lot of the things that you said just resonated with me. So I appreciate so much you taking your time and just letting us kind of pick your brain about kind of maybe in the future, like where we're all, I think we're earlier on in life and we're looking to be like, what do I need to do? Where do I need to go?
Mm,
How can I kind of find my way? And I think it's nice to hear from someone who has been, further along on the path with Jesus. And like, that's always so beautiful. So I appreciate your words of wisdom.